There was a time when the streets of Nusavitas hummed with quarrels, lullabies, sales pitches, and gossip. Now, the only sounds were perfect mirrors. Morning vendors called, "Rise, sir," and passers-by replied, "Yo, boy." Every utterance that met public air folded neatly onto itself, fore and aft. The Ministry of Harmonious Speech claimed it eliminated misunderstanding. What a citizen said, a citizen immediately confirmed. The reality was simpler. The Palindrome implant, fused behind every ear at age 7, monitored subvocal current. If a sentence didn't read the same backward as forward, the implant seized the larynx mid-syllable with a wave of paralytic pain. Lena Yosef had dissected palindromes before she was tall enough to reach an overhead projector. As a doctoral student, she diagrammed evil olive, the way surgeons unravel arteries. After the implants became mandatory, her expertise became a curse. Colleagues whispered that she served the regime, yet the ministry never hired her. They didn't need scholars, they had engineers. Lena worked at the Linguistic Preservation Archives, a damp basement beneath the National Library where banned manuscripts were stored for posterity. Shiny black drones drifted between stacks, reading each spine aloud in palindromic summaries. God, a dog, Maya yam. They never seemed to notice Lena. She wore the government lab coat but moved like a ghost through the fluorescent gloom, pocketing scraps of smuggled language, bits of syntax too asymmetrical for public resonance. She was sorting microfiche one afternoon when a boy appeared, barefoot, eyes fevered. He had cracked the security door and slipped inside. "Doc," he whispered, lips trembling. The implants hated whispers. Compression distorted symmetry. So the boy's throat jerked. He gagged. The pain clamped down. Lena pressed 2 fingers to his jaw hinge, a trick she'd learned. Pressure on a certain nerve muffled the implant feedback, buying maybe 30 seconds of free speech. "Say nothing," she warned in pure palindromic syllables. "Take, O cat." The boy exhaled in relief. Motioning him to follow, Lena guided him behind a shelf labeled Census, Praxis, CF. There, far from drone mics, she released his jaw. He had a folded plastiflex hidden in his waistband. On it the same symbol repeated, a diagonal stroke, thick at one end, thinning to a hair at the other. Not a perfect line, no mirror, no matching mate. "What is this?" Lena asked, careful to maintain symmetrical diction. "Drawn onward?" But the boy, mouth raw, forced out, "Boats sail," and doubled over as the implant punished asymmetry. Lena caught him. Later, she'd remember the moment as the first undeniable crack in the glass. She laid him on a cot in her office and administered a muscle relaxant that scrambled neural feedback long enough to hold conversation at a whisper. The implant's pain indicators blinked amber inside the boy's ear. He would regain full constraint within an hour. "I'm Eli," he rasped. "I carry messages. The lines you see, that's half a stanza." "Half," Lena repeated. "We share them in halves. Each half by itself is non-palindromic, but together they form." He searched the acoustic ceiling for courage. Asymmetric poetry. Meaning travels in the imbalance. Lena studied the diagonal stroke. At first it seemed trivial, then she realized the thickness encoded stress, the taper encoded duration. It was prosody printed sideways, a meter visible to the eye, yet silent to the implant. An asymmetric script, broken into fragments so that no single courier carried enough non-palindromic content to trigger alarms. Her pulse quickened. The ministry's syntactic net trapped vocal impurities, but silent text passed free. That had never been the problem. Citizens wrote all the time. It was when they opened their mouths that the trap snapped shut. How, then, did this poem rebel? Eli answered before she asked. "We read aloud at Convergence. There's a glitch." His voice frayed. If multiple speakers recite alternating halves quickly, the implants process only individual phrases, not the combined sequence. The net sees symmetry inside each throat, not between them. Assemble enough throats, you build asymmetry in the air, line by line. A poem too crooked to be reversed. Lena's mind mapped the algorithm in microseconds. Implants monitored the wearer's stream, but did not cross-rex neighbors in real time. Collective speech could slip through if partitioned. It was the auditory equivalent of a stroboscopic painting, no single frame illegal, motion itself subversive. She felt both awe and terror. She also understood why the boy had risked everything. Rumor named her the Lost Lexicon, the only linguist with access to centuries of outlawed verse. Eli wanted new fuel, metaphor sharp enough to pierce steel exoskeletons of surveillance. The cost spring squeaked as Eli tried to sit. We meet in the drainage tunnels under Magdalene Square. Tomorrow. Dusk. Ring lines. Lena considered the cameras, the retina scans at every street corner. Even thinking unsanctioned words could set off psychoacoustic flags. Yet she nodded. I'll come. He slipped out the way he came. The drones resumed their murmuring rounds. That night Lena opened the confidential archives. Keats, Rilke, Machado, languages long extinct. Every text whispered asymmetry. She selected phrases like, see, the crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead. I do not love you as the plant that never blooms. Inside this clay jug a nightingale sings. She bent over her desk and began slicing. Each line she parsed into complementary fragments, ensuring neither fragment alone exceeded 7 syllables. The conservative threshold before spontaneous palindrome collapse might corrupt memory. Tiny strips of paper littered her workspace like bone shards. She also composed her own stand, something the ministry's analysts could never trace. Power Paris itself on a whetstone of secrets. Yet every edge thirsts. She broke it. Power Paris itself on a /whetstone of /secrets. Yet every edge thirsts. 6 carriers needed. She sorted envelopes, coded by color, then paused. If she were caught distributing this contraband, the implant would not merely clamp. The authorities would remove her voice entirely. The next evening she walked to Magdalene Square. Sunset smeared the glass spires bronze. Public screens flashed the minister of harmonious speech delivering the Daily Mirror litany. Live on, no evil. Citizens repeated in unison. Their voices overlapped into a single palindromic drone, as comforting and dead as static. Lena ducked down a maintenance grate cloaked by hedges. The ladder descended into damp echo. At the tunnel's base, clock arrows angled left. She followed, water slapping her boots. A dozen rebels gathered in a culvert vaulted like a cathedral nave. Flickering chem lamps painted their faces green. Among them a gray-haired woman tuned a handmade flute with holes drilled off center. Others carried notes scrawled on cloth, stone, skin. They greeted Lena one by one, each name folded into palindrome to satisfy implants. Ada, Otto, Hannah. Eli emerged from the gloom. Eyes bright, he raised a palm for silence, then spoke in perfect symmetry. Live not on evil. They responded. Was it a rat I saw? The ritual satisfied the implants, which soon relaxed their vigilance. Then Eli gestured to Lena. She unbuttons her coat, revealing the packets. The group inhaled, hungry. They formed a circle. Eli explained the choreography. Each speaker would hold a fragment. On his signal, they would read, rapid call and response, stone skipping water. Individually, the fragments remained reversible. Collectively, they would branch into the illicit future tense, the forbidden subjunctive. The implants would feel only palindromic kernels. The rebellion would blossom in the gaps between. They rehearsed first with nonsense. "Mom!" cried one voice. "Pop!" answered another. The implants purred. Then Lena distributed the real words. She watched each face as participants sounded silent syllables in their head, lips testing shape. Even in mute rehearsal, the tunnel vibrated. Eli lifted a rusted conductor's baton. Tap, tap. Voices ignited. Power pairs. Itself on a whetstone of secrets, yet every edge thirsts. Silence followed thick as sap. No seizures, no screams. Implants had missed it. Lena felt tears. Not from fear this time, but from the sudden presence of unshackled language. It was like inhaling after being underwater for years. The circle erupted in grins. They continued, merging ancient fragments with new ones, building a patchwork poem with 60 throats. Each stanza leaned forward, never mirrored back. At one point, the flute joined, its crooked holes producing intervals no symmetrical scale could hold. They wove around the flute's dissonance, shaping verse to sound like broken light. An hour passed. Eli closed with a simple line, "Day 1, we won." It was a palindrome, a mask, but everyone heard the subtext, "Day 1, indeed." They dispersed in pairs to avoid pattern detection, stuffing fragments into boots and cuffs. Lena emerged through a drainage hatch near the river, adrenaline humming. She didn't notice the tiny lens embedded in a lamppost. 2 nights later, the ministry announced a public demonstration of zero-error compliance. A random city block would be audited, citizens would recite under drone speakers. Failure meant indefinite detainment. The chosen block was Magdalene Square. Lena understood instantly. Someone, or something, had recorded vibrations in the culvert. The regime suspected asymmetry brewed there, and now it would flood the square with surveillance to flush out dissenters. She hurried to her office. The drones no longer mouthed mild palindromes, they blared sirens. She stuffed reference books, printout schematics, and her personal notebooks into a satchel. Before leaving, she paused at the microfiche cabinet. On a translucent strip lay the palindrome most cited by the ministry. "Able was I ere I saw Elba." She smiled at the imperial ghost, haunting its own reflection. On the back of the strip she wrote, "Elba was able, but Napoleon fell." A non-palindrome. She slid the strip into her pocket. At home she received Eli's terse mirrored text, "Now 1. Code for SOS." He had been captured or cornered. Outside, drones patrolled like iron dragonflies. Loudspeakers patrolled like loud not on evil. Citizens echoed. Lena suited up. Noise-dampening ear inserts, a portable jammer repurposed from library equipment, and a stack of fake palindromic leaflets to serve as decoys. She moved on foot through alleys until reaching the perimeter of Magdalene Square. Barricades funneled residents into queues. Each person must read assigned palindromes from a hollow displacement while implants broadcast biometric telemetry. Non-compliance equaled arrest. Lena scanned the line. Eli stood near the front, flanked by guards. His face was bruised, but his eyes flickered when he spotted her. She lowered her gaze and joined the line farther back, heart pounding. Guards handed her a slate. The phrase, "No devil," lived on. Easy. Yet she sensed the trap. The ministry wanted proof of collective purity, but also exposure of any hidden network. How to reveal power's flaw without dooming them all. She remembered the glitch. Implants processed each individual separately. If she could chain non-palindromic meaning across multiple speakers in rapid succession, within earshot of recorders, perhaps she could inject asymmetry into the public broadcast itself, turning the regime's spectacle into its undoing. But she needed others in sequence. She caught the eye of a middle-aged woman 2 places ahead, one of the tunnel poets. The woman blinked twice, then angled her slate slightly so Lena could glimpse. "Evil rats on no star live." A long palindrome, margin for slicing. Lena considered timing, distances, microphone pickup fields. She mouthed a silent plan. Fragment. The woman nodded. Guards prodded the queue forward. Rain speckled the holograms. First the woman spoke, but she stopped after 4 words. "Evil rats on." The display flash read. Partial reading triggered error. Guards started toward her. She feigned cough. The implant seized but released when she completed reflexively. With "No star live." Palindromic integrity restored. Guard suspicion reset. However, the microphone had captured the partial phrase distinctly before completion. The next person, a baker Lena recognized from the culvert, ensured his slate contained a different palindrome. He likewise paused mid-sentence to sneeze, emitting fragment, "Red rum, sir," finished quickly, "is murder." Another micro beat of asymmetry. Lena saw guards exchange glances. They noted the odd pattern but had no rule against tempo irregularities. Now came Eli. His slate read, "Step on no pets." He glanced over his shoulder. At the precise moment the recorder swung his way, Lena activated the jammer inside her sleeve for half a second. just enough to scramble his implant sensors, causing a hiccup. He shouted only, "Step on." Pain flashed in his eyes, but she killed the jammer. His implant regained feed. He added "no pets." Tension rippled across the square. 3 fragments. Evil rats on. / red rum, sir / step on. Not yet meaningful. Lena's turn. She inhaled. Her slate. No devil lived on. She read first 2 words only. No devil. Then pretended to adjust her hood. The implant twinged menacingly. She pushed through, finishing lived on. Microphones captured evil rats on. / red rum, sir / step on / no devil. Out of order gibberish perhaps, unless one ran acrostic diagonals, layering them with earlier lines in public memory. To produce real effect, she needed final stroke. Behind her stood a teenager she didn't know. She slipped him the microfiche strip while the guards were distracted by a woman fainting on the strip's underside. Elba was able, but Napoleon fell. He flipped it, brows knitting, palindromic side-faced cameras. He was instructed to read that. Yet he would choose. His lips moved. Lena couldn't hear, but saw his shoulders square. He spoke. Elba was able, but Napoleon fell. It was raw asymmetry. Pain cracked across his jaw. He screamed, but finished. Sensors spiked. The plaza exploded in confusion. Some citizens clutched throats as implants overcorrected. But others, those who had rehearsed in tunnels, began chanting fragments in rapid volley, shielding novices by weaving palindromes around them, diluting offending frequencies. "Madam, in Eden, I'm at Adam," volleyed with "time, emit." Security drones programmed to isolate single-source violations spun in mad circles as overlapping streams spiraled into complex counterpoint the processors could not parse. Loudspeakers glitched, regurgitating half-phrases, each more skewed. Within the sonic maelstrom, something cracked. Implants shimmered like struck glass. Several simply failed, perhaps overloaded by contradictory mandates. A hush fell, a first true silence. Then one voice rang clear, unfiltered by hardware. Freedom is not symmetric. It wasn't palindromic, and no pain followed. A chorus answered, off-mirror and alive. A square filled with words that refused to meet themselves, going backward. It was messy, beautiful, human. Lena reached Eli. He was laughing, incredulous, touching his throat as though discovering it anew. They embraced briefly, then set about guiding people. Some implants still worked. They hushed those wearers, teaching them breath control, nerve pressure, gentle taps to disorient feedback. Library tricks became public medicine. Ministry guards fled when the noise proved too unpredictable for command. Drones crashed into flagpoles, their algorithms undone. Night spread. Fires were lit for warmth, not destruction. Poets scribbled verses on torn propaganda posters. Kids clapped rhythms the implants couldn't follow. In a corner, the gray-haired woman played her crooked flute, now soaring. By dawn, word of the breach reached every district via analog whispers. The ministry broadcast emergency decrees, but their palindromes now sounded like nursery rhymes, quaint relics. Citizens discovered that once you have spoken freely without punishment, the gag bruises forever lose legitimacy. Within a week, technicians dismantled the central phonemic grid to stop citywide seizures. A transitional council formed, debating whether implants should be removed surgically or repurposed as voluntary tools for speech therapy. Lena was elected to chair the Linguistic Restoration Committee. On the first day of open assembly, reporters asked her what language policy she envisioned. She considered the thousands of years of human communication. She thought of how symmetry could still dazzle when chosen. How a child might delight in saying race car, purely for play. She faced the hall, implants on many still active yet relaxed, awaiting command. Her answer came slow, deliberate, decidedly lopsided. Let words wander. The audience gasped, no mirror. Then applause ragged, asymmetrical rolled through the chamber like summer thunder. A month later, surgeons removed her implant under local anesthesia. When the casing clicked free, she heard the world newly unfiltered. Coughs, whispers, chair legs scraping, flawed, unreversed. She asked the surgeon for the spent device and slipped it into her pocket as artifact. That evening, Back at the Culvert now-turned community theater, Lena gave the first public lecture on the history of bilateral language control. She ended not with a poem, but with a fragment of one, its completion offered to the crowd. The future leans. The audience, uncoached, responded in showery voices, each adding a different conclusion. None matched, none needed to. The room rang with divergent echoes, a living, expanding palindrome in reverse, starting identical, ending infinitely unraveled. Outside, the city's old speakers clicked one last time, static hissed, then died. No new command replaced it. The quiet was not absence but invitation, an empty page filled with possibility. And though Lena knew the work ahead would be long, rewriting curricula, healing throats scarred by implants, she also knew the hardest part was done. The tongue had tasted its own direction. It would never again consent to fold neatly, unless it wanted to. She walked home beneath street lamps whose cameras had been reoriented to frame murals, not faces. Someone had painted on a wall in bold slanted script, far from symmetrical, joyous in its tilt. Forward, we draw off. It was almost a palindrome, but not quite. The near mirror made it even sweeter. Lena laughed aloud, a sound with no echo, and kept walking, letting the night invent sentences as crooked as the road ahead.